The popular story of the Middle Ages and the Church is full of sharp, memorable claims that medieval people were ignorant, that the Church crushed every new idea, that witches were burned by clerical decree, or that the world was thought to be flat. Those claims are powerful because they simplify a complex past into a single, shareable tale. But when we ignore the nuance, we slowly shave away the truth until what we're left with barely resembles reality. Let's take another look at what was lost in the rumors about the role the middle-aged church played in shaping paths we still tread today. Myth 1. Everyone in medieval Europe thought the world was flat. Sailors feared falling off the edge. Voyages of exploration had to overcome a church-imposed flat earth dogma. Why the myth feels plausible. The image is vivid and easy to teach, a small, ignorant world closed off by superstition. Correction. Educated medieval thinkers, many of them clerics, accepted a spherical Earth. Classical sources and medieval cosmologies treated the Earth as round, and medieval maps and university curricula reflect that knowledge. Myth 2. The Church systematically blocked scientific progress, forbade inquiry, and punished anyone who pursued natural philosophy. Why the myth feels plausible. High-profile conflicts, real or exaggerated, and later Enlightenment narratives portray religion and science as locked in a permanent war. Correction. Religious institutions were often patrons and preservers of learning. Monasteries copied texts, cathedral schools and universities taught natural philosophy, and many clerics were active scientists. Conflicts occurred, but the relationship was complex and often collaborative rather than uniformly suppressive. Myth 3. Galileo was physically tortured and put to death by the Inquisition for defending heliocentrism. His trial is the archetypal example of church cruelty to science. Why the myth feels plausible. The dramatic image of a martyr scientist fits the larger science versus religion story and is easy to dramatize. Correction. Galileo was tried by the Roman Inquisition, found to have violated a 1616 injunction, and spent the rest of his life under house arrest. He was not executed or physically tortured. The episode involved personal rivalries, politics, and interpretive disputes as much as doctrinal suppression. Myth 4. The Church burned libraries, banned entire fields of thought, and made intellectual life impossible outside approved doctrine. Correction. Censorship existed, and some books were prohibited in certain contexts, but it was selective and often aimed at specific texts or interpretations. Many books circulated widely. Debate and intellectual exchange continued in monasteries, universities, and courts. Myth 5. The Church invented witch hunts and centrally organized mass persecutions of witches across Europe. Correction. Witch trials and executions were driven by a mix of local, secular, and religious authorities. Motivations included social tensions, legal changes, petty grievances, land disputes, and local politics. In many regions, secular courts played the leading role. The phenomenon varied greatly by time and place. Myth 6. After Rome fell, Europe entered a long, stagnant, dark age with no learning, art, or innovation until the Renaissance rescued civilization. Why the myth feels plausible. The contrast between classical antiquity and the Renaissance is stark, and the label Dark Ages is rhetorically effective. Correction. The term Dark Ages is misleading. The medieval centuries saw continuity of learning, artistic production, technological innovation, and institutional development, monasticism, legal systems, universities, that preserved and transformed knowledge. Myth 7. Medieval universities were secular hotbeds set against ecclesiastical authority and deliberately opposed to church teaching. Why the myth feels plausible. Modern universities are often secular, so projecting that back seems natural. Correction. Many medieval universities grew from cathedral schools and operated under ecclesiastical charters. Theology was central, many faculty were clerics, and the church played a formative role even as universities developed distinct legal and intellectual identities. Myth 8. Religious authorities banned anatomical dissection and medical research, leaving medicine primitive and based only on prayer. Why the myth feels plausible. Religious taboos about the body and later controversies over cadaver use feed this image. Correction. Attitudes varied. In many medieval centers, dissection and medical study occurred, often within university settings or under clerical patronage. Medical knowledge advanced through translations, hospitals, and practical training alongside theological life. Myth 9. The Crusades were single, centrally commanded holy wars launched by a unified church to conquer lands for Rome. Why the myth feels plausible. Papal calls to arms and crusader imagery make the campaigns look like top-down religious enterprises. Correction. The Crusades combined religious rhetoric with political, economic, and social motives. Participants included princes, merchants, and local powers with varied aims, and papal authority was influential but not the sole driver. Myth 10. Rome dictated every marriage, law, harvest, and custom. Local life was a direct extension of papal will. Why the myth feels plausible. The Church's moral and legal reach was broad, and centralized institutions are easier to criticize. Correction. Medieval Christendom was decentralized. Local bishops, secular lords, guilds, customary law, and regional practices all shaped daily life. Papal influence varied by region and period. Local practice often diverged from official pronouncements. Myths about the Middle Ages and the Church endure because they simplify a complicated past into a single moral drama. Expanding each myth shows how the popular claim is usually a compressed story that mixes a kernel of truth with exaggeration, selective evidence, or later ideological framing. The real medieval world was plural, contested, and dynamic, full of institutions that both preserved knowledge and sometimes constrained it, of clerics who were scholars and patrons as well as enforcers, and of local communities whose practices often differed from official rhetoric. Thanks for watching, and remember, friends, stay curious.